Good morning, my creative friends, and welcome back to the Paper Doll Chronicles. I'm Dr. Minette Riordan. This is Painting in Your PJs with Minette. Got my cozy fleece on this morning. It's starting to have that little bit of a hint of fall in the air. Couple of random trees already starting to get some color here in northern Colorado where I live. We are continuing our exploration and journey through the Paper Doll Chronicles this year. And I'm going to get back to my notes over here. I want to talk about where we're going in September. September is such a interesting, really like a threshold month. It's a time of sort of taking stock. It's a time of starting to harvest so many of the gifts of the year. There's also often kind of an uptick in sort of that back to school energy. Got to get busy. It's cooling off. So we're in between the playtime of summer and the energy of fall. And we're going to call this the Orchard Doll today. And she is all about harvesting the abundance and wisdom that we have gained so far in our lives. So if you're here, you probably know that I work with women in midlife and beyond, and really love using art as a creative process and practice for self-discovery. And this year we're doing that through extended paper doll play. And so this idea of an orchard doll is all about how can I harvest the gifts of my own life? How can I look within and notice what are the fruits of my life that are ripening? Where am I feeling abundant and nourished? What dreams perhaps are still waiting on the branch and not yet ready? And if my orchard doll could speak, what wisdom might she share for me? These are all same. Aw, thank you, Miss Lorraine. Glad to be back after a wonderful week away attending an art retreat called Spellbound in Taos, New Mexico. I love New Mexico. It was a wonderful time away with some of my closest girlfriends. And I came back with just a touch of a cold, which is just more annoying than anything, but excited to be here gathered with you with this new collection of dolls. So September, we're going to have 4 different dolls. We'll make a new doll each week. I want to use some of the hand painted paper and fabric that I created over last month's videos and as part of these dolls, and I was sort of taking a sneak peek back through some of the beauty. Good morning, Yvonne. And it was so fun to have walked away from my studio for about a week and then to come back and see what we created. And I've also created a new set of faces, black and white faces that you can color or that you could trace or use as inspiration for making your own dolls. There's way more than 4 to choose from, and I sent those out by email. So if you're on the Paper Doll Chronicles email list, you got those in your inbox this morning. And if not, you can, thank you, Lorraine. If not, you can sign up for our email list and we will make sure you get a colored set of dolls right away. But then we're going to be replacing that with these beautiful black and white dolls. So here's kind of a sneak peek at those doll faces. And I have a lot of fun. I use a tool called Midjourney to design all of these faces in a style that feels really fun and exploratory, asked for different ethnicities. It doesn't do a great job. It either makes everybody young or everybody old and not a lot in between. But there were a few in here like this one that it's like, oh, that one feels a little bit like me. I didn't print out all of them. I think there's 7 pages of them, but here are some of those pages to get us started. And I often like to start with the face, and I was trying to decide, did I want to do whole body dolls? But I'm really loving making the dolls on collaged cards on tags. I've been able to really use them in other art journals. They feel really fun. Oh, I love her face. Like I look down and it's like, oh, this face right here really pulled me in. So that might be the face for today. None of them have glasses. They definitely need some glasses added. And a friend was here visiting earlier in the summer, and we were at a little sort of one of those vintage flea market shops, with all the different stalls. And there was this box. I love it. It's all taped up with old duct tape, but they're old multiplication flashcards. And I love using stuff like this to create on. It's a great way to recycle it or play with, but I loved kind of this long, skinny shape as well. So I'm thinking that this month I'm going to work on some of these flashcards to create my dolls. And you can make your dolls any way you want, but if you want to do something similar, you can use a large tag, a manila tag, or simply take a recycled manila folder and cut it up. It makes a great, nice, stiff substrate for making your dolls on. And as I was flipping through and thinking about this theme of an orchard doll of abundance, this was a piece of lace that I had painted up on one of the August videos, and lace always has that little bit of abundant feel to me, right? Lace was added to dresses often as a sign of like decoration, but also wealth and abundance. And so something about this, and even though the theme is orchard, and where my head went right away was to apples, something about the color purple also felt rich and luxurious. And this theme again, and this is again one of those pieces of watercolor paper that I painted up, which will be really fun to cut out and make into a dress or some clothes. And then here's some of the other things that we created from last month. This was some of the fabric, some of which might become parts of journal covers. This was a pretty heavy fabric. This was some photo paper. Look, there's some more. So I can feel there already, there's like a color palette emerging. And I was thinking also with this idea of abundance about weaving and what it might be like to do a little, those are stuck on there, a little paper weaving to represent some of the different threads and the harvest of gifts that I want to pull forward. So these are all painty things created last month. Okay, being very drawn to these sort of pinks and purples. And I love the sound of the crinkly paper. All right, I have more than enough paper and fabric than I could possibly use in one setting. And even this is leftover paper from the play time. I'm kind of loving those polka dots and those solids. And maybe just some little, these kind of maybe represent some of that harvesting that abundance of gifts. And so as I'm making this doll, what I'm thinking about, and I want to encourage you to think about also, is this idea of an abundance of gifts, lessons learned, wisdom earned, and how in this second half of life or third quarter or whatever you want to call it in your 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, when you think back to all the things that you've done, and I'm taking an inner child class and doing some inner child work, which will probably bleed over into some of our paper doll making over the next couple of months as well, is thinking about what are the the through lines or the threads, the things that were seeds that were planted as a child that are starting now to show up again on repeat or come full circle. For me, it's my love of animals. Good morning, Lisa Wells. Good to see you, my friend. The things that when I think about the through lines, connection to nature, connection to animals, I don't have any furry babies at the moment in real life, but they are showing up in all of my art everywhere abundantly. I was looking at my studio this morning. I just finished a stag painting and a mountain lion painting, and it feels like this live menagerie. But I think about all the different opportunities I've had to lead, to teach, to create, to write, how much I love teaching and facilitating. All these things are on my mind as I'm going to create this doll today that really represents this abundance of gifts. And I'm going to start with her face, and I'm feeling very drawn to this face in the center. I still had my watercolor pencils and crayons. These are all, I think, watercolor pencils out from last week's play. And so I thought I would start with the face and just get some little bit of color down on her, get her cut out, and then let her kind of start to tell me, what does she want to look like, right? What is sort of the visual expression of the abundance of gifts that I'm feeling? And I love having these pre-done faces because they just make this process just go a little bit faster. I love drawing my own faces as well. And sometimes I will use these faces as a way to, I will trace them, right, and get them down and use them more as a template for creating my own faces. Let's see if there's got to be some brown in here somewhere. Deep indigo. Okay, she's like, I want to have some blue hair. That may not even show, but we'll give her some blue hair. When I was in grad school working on my master's in Austin, my hair was kind of this fun, deep cranberry color. And I printed these on cardstock, just a thin cardstock, because that's what would work with my printer. If you don't have a printer, you can take these to a Staples, Office Depot, a FedEx store, and have them printed out on cardstock. And I would have a few different copies of them printed. You can print them in different sizes. I'm going to leave some of that paper showing through just to give her a little bit of shine. I'm not trying to make those colors too realistic. I love my Caran d'Ache tools for creating faces. I feel like I can really get some of the color and depth. Just needs a little bit more shadow. And when she's dry, I'm going to come back and I think draw some glasses on her too. And just keeping her really simple. I'm going to cut her out. She feels like this feels like a fun beginning here. And you can see I'm using my paintbrush right on my Derwent Inktense pencil. It's a great way to play with those Derwents. You don't always have to put the color directly down onto the paper, but you can also come in and simply tap that brush, get a wet brush right on that pencil. You can also dip the pencil directly into water and color with it. They're one of my favorite tools. I love how vibrant and intense the colors are. Yeah, she just wanted a little more intensity and vibrancy. Let's see if we can get a little bit of that blue to come out on top of that black. Maybe not, but that's okay. I don't care if I color outside the lines because I'm going to trim her up. And I'm thinking I want to also seal the colors in so the colors stay put. So I'm going to let her get good and dry, and then I'm going to seal her face with a coat of matte medium. That way, if I wanted to draw over the top or add some paint at some point, right? Like I have the a little more flexibility. And this cardstock, I can't keep painting layers on it. It won't, it'll start to pill up. So by painting over it with some matte medium, that'll seal the surface, the color in that I have, and allow me to draw or paint over the top of her as well. Let me find my scissors here. And I'm going to let her get nice and dry before I get my fingers all over it, and then I will do some fussy cutting. But already I love how she looks. Like it definitely feels like she needs some flowers in her hair. And this was just the under paper from where I dropped some paint when we were doing the painty fabrics and papers last month. But I also have that polka dotted paper. So I'm going to start to think about how do I want to create her? Does she need to have kind of a full body? Does she want to be kind of that more abstract? And I love that it says multiply on the top of the card. We're talking about the gifts of abundance and, having those gifts multiply throughout our lifetime. So that feels appropriate here as well. I'm looking at her, noticing that this one has no neck. She definitely needs a neck. But somehow I'm sensing the ones that I did in July were very abstract and didn't have bodies. But she's feeling like she wants to have more of a body. So I'm thinking I just pulled some new magazine images. I have a whole box of magazines that I want to clear out and pull out what I want and get rid of them, and including a Gudrun Sodren catalog. So I'm thinking that one of these might give me that nice base, that kind of right size, so she has a little bit of a body. So, I can use the magazine as a template for making the doll my own. That pose is kind of fun and not a pose, not a pose that I would normally necessarily choose. I know, right, Yvonne? Like, how appropriate is it? I'm also looking for a body that kind of matches like her shape. Let's see what else we got in here. That kind of feels like the right size. Kind of like this pose too. Doesn't quite fit. I'm sort of feeling drawn to this one where she's sitting, being a little more contemplative. Love that very glamorous pose, but that doesn't fit my theme of sort of harvesting the gifts of my abundance. She's so beautiful. You can tell I was pulling images. There's somebody in my local little library always leaves copies of Cowboy and Indian magazine, which is not something I would ever read, but has great collage images in it. Okay, I think we're just gonna, these are all landscape ones. I knew there was a few more of these in here. Let's see. I thought I had pulled out a bunch of these. I kind of like that one as well. And I'm looking for something that, you know, feels proportionate, even though I can change the size at will. I love her. I love this catalog because they always have a beautiful variety of ages of women and ethnicities of women. Okay. It felt like I needed to look through them, and I had already decided, so I can let go of that. And I'm like, oh, what is this that's in my color palette here? Oh, look how fun that is. Maybe she wants to be part of something bigger that would actually go in a journal page. I love how as we start to intuitively flip through images and ideas, things begin to take on a life of their own. So let's cut her out. Let's put you guys away. I love her little black and white polka dotted pants. And I'm thinking I might even use her as a template for the body. And I can either collage right over the top of her, or I can trace her so that I can use her for something else because I really like that image. I don't care about the car, but something about that. We're coming up on the full moon in a few days, so definitely lots of full moon energy circling. I want to use some of my own fabrics on here, which may get lost when I start to have too much of the same color palette. And bring that tag back. And I'm fine if she flows over the edges of the tag. The tag is just to give her a little bit of solidity, but I'm wondering, yeah, maybe not the tag. Okay. I might even go get I just started working in a bigger collage journal, and it feels like this might want to end up being a whole page. And sometimes paper dolls don't want to, thanks Anna, sometimes paper dolls don't want to get glued down and they want to move, but there's something about this idea of harvesting the gifts that is feeling like she's digging in, right? She's sitting into the roots of things, and that she needs to have a little bit more permanence. And this is what I love about working intuitively with expressive arts, is never staying attached to an idea. I came in with an idea this morning and I could stick with that idea, but it would feel constrained and it would feel maybe a little bit artificial. And so for me, there's something really important about listening to those little nudges because it's where we build self-trust, where we connect to our own intuition. Oh yeah, she's very cute. Okay, still loving the face, still loving this background. Now I got to think about, and I love that she's sitting very grounded on the trunk of a tree as well in this very relaxed pose with the sort of weather energy and magic here behind her. And now I want to start to think about where do I want to go? So I'm feeling like maybe she's going to be wearing this lace on her pants or her skirt. And still feeling like, and it's funny, I picked a pattern here that has that little bit of a woven pattern. So I'm wanting to maybe weave a little bit of this fabric. So I think I'm actually going to, do I want to cut her apart? Not yet, but I am going to turn this over because it's all pretty. I'm going to grab a pencil. I am going to cut her hair. I want her neck and shoulders because my doll does not have that neck and shoulders. And we're going to start to build her up here. She may need a different neck for that head. I might just turn that a little bit. Yeah, I think she's going to need, so I'm going to want to make a neck for her. I don't want her head sitting, on the top of her shoulders. She'll feel kind of silly. Oh, I did that backwards. I'm like, why? Because I drew it backwards. I'm going to have to trace it on the front, although it may not matter because I think I want to do a little bit of paper weaving on here and bring in, when I'm thinking about abundance and harvest, bringing in maybe some of these other colors. Okay, think. Try this one more time. I'm going to trace it on this side. And I think what's bugging me is that we got to get our hands in there. So she's going to get cut apart. And just used as a model. And that's going to make my life easier. And I like her pants and how she's sitting, so I might even keep those or add a little bit of color over the top of the pattern here. This way I can make sure that I'm capturing all the parts of the clothing. Maybe I want some of this mixed up colors up here. And everything is figure outable, right? Like this is about just making it up as we go. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? This is about, well, let me try this. It's just paper and paint, letting go of perfectionism, again, letting go of needing it to look a particular way. And when I think about this idea of kind of harvesting gifts, I've always had kind of that, well, let's just try it and see what happens, right? Like always been that little bit of a risk taker. That kind of just willing to make mistakes. I used to be, even I would say more that way, more of a risk taker and adventure. And sometimes I wonder, what happened to her with work and parenting and growing businesses, moving across country a few times. Like, what happened to that more adventurous spirit? All right, starting to come together a little bit more. We gave her a colorful neck. Maybe she's just going to get painted up. So then we can come back over here. We can start to see how we can use anything as a pattern for our dolls. And I'm trying to get the base doll done, and then I can think about adding those elements that really represent the abundance part. Like she definitely needs maybe some stuff in her hair, maybe some stuff in her blouse. Maybe I want to get some of that lace glued down so that she has some nice lacy pants that feel kind of rich and playful. And I'm trying to decide, do I still want to do, I think I'm going to let go of the idea of weaving for now, but somehow it feels like we need some of this fun yellow sparkle spiral energy. This is from one of the watercolor paintings that we did, and I love the shimmer in that watercolor paint. Oh, so maybe she is harvesting the abundance of those gifts. Let's make this just a little bit smaller. And as soon as I put that down there, it felt like this very radiant heart energy, like the seat of my passion and vitality, right? That sort of magic orb that is glowing right out of the center of her, that's mirrored by this full moon energy over here. Yeah, she's starting to come together. And I don't know, maybe this is going to become her own. So maybe this was just that symbol of what's glowing and what's blooming. And she's going to come back over here. I love how things just sort of change and evolve. And maybe from here she's just going to have a skirt. Okay, I need to get some parts glued together and then it will start to be, so it's interesting, it's the shape of that orb that feels important more than this fun image here, which I love this image, and I loved this image. And then she just needs to have her long flowy skirt, which feels like that kind of fabric weaving part that I was being drawn to. It's my glue stick. And when we're working with these dolls, you know, one of the questions that I always ask is, what are the gifts that you have for me, right? What is this orchard doll that represents harvest, abundance, the uniqueness of my own gifts? And she's starting to come together and take on a life of her own. Let's see if we can brighten her up a little bit. There we go. Can do a little, now that I have her know where I'm going, do a little fussy cutting there. And it feels like she wants some just need to give her a little bit of shape and dimension here. She's got kind of these different layers of sleeves. And then this needs to get attached. And I love just piecing things together in this way, right? Like it's just glue and paper. It's all, and when you're working with the glue stick, you know, things can move. Definitely want to keep some of that shimmer. The other thing I love about working on a tag or a card like this is that I will often turn it over and do my journal writing right on the back. You know, this is patterned up. There's really not a lot of space for writing, but there's plenty of space in here to come in and answer some of the journal prompts, which are in the description of the video, and they're also in the email that I sent out to the email list this morning. So the numbers are kind of interesting. So let me think about, probably going to want some color or pattern underneath this piece of lace and not the number. Yep, definitely going to want, do I want to have it continue to be feels like it needs some of those brighter colors. Something to kind of maybe mirror the yellow. Yeah, that feels a little better. All right. So this we're just going to make it up, and I'm going to let go of her sitting and have her be more standing instead. We want to kind of have a sense of the length here. So it's not going to be a super, let's see. again, we're just, we're fiddling, fiddling, fiddling. And it's okay if it's longer than the tag. More of those little sparkles in there. And I'm probably going to want some of this, some more of this, the yellow. Something about the light, right? And I love the light of fall and September also. I also love using my own handmade painty papers. This doesn't need to be perfect underneath. Thank you, Yvonne. I'm glad you like the journal prompts. It's that important piece of the process to come back to that journaling after working with the doll. To see what it is that she has to say. To me, it's the piece where the making of the dolls themselves is delightful and fun. And what we learn about ourselves in the process of creating is important, but there's something about that final step of returning to the journaling that is so important. There she is. Look at her, all coming together. Okay, now she needs her purple skirt. And that can kind of flow over the edges a little bit. And I love combining the fabric and paper in my artwork. It's also, like I said, I felt like it was weaving, but it might be some stitching that gets added to her, or maybe some beads that want to get attached. And I'm thinking a stapler would make this really easy, or some tape. And I don't have my double stick tape right here. I'm going to go grab my stapler. I'll be right back. So don't be afraid to just staple things together, right? So this part of her skirt up here is going to get hidden. And I mean, staples can add a fun look to things also, but they're a great fast way. Plus, I don't necessarily, so the lace, you can glue it down, but it can be a little bit tricky to glue. And the staples can just add a look. Oh, she's feeling very festive, perhaps a little formal, but I'm kind of digging her. I kind of like that word multiply there. And so now it sort of feels like she's dancing in the moonlight as she's harvesting the wisdom and abundance, right? Like maybe she's walking among the trees of an orchard in the moonlight, expressing gratitude for her gifts and abundance. Okay, I'm going to glue the top of her down. Feels like she definitely wants to, and I kind of even like the color of the cardstock. A lot of time I would paint that or add other things to it. Try to figure out how long do we want her to be. Probably trim up this bottom a little bit. The other thing about just stapling this to the paper is I'm going to glue the paper down, but then I can leave that fabric nice and flowy on there. Make sure we get that nice and stuck down. Oh, and there she is. I love using my own handmade peepers in the doll making as well. Love that her hands are sort of sticking out a little bit, like, and the way the skirt is kind of flowing feels like she's in motion, even though she's, sort of attached here. So now if I wanted, she could still be part of this scene or another scene in an art journal. It's interesting, she feels sort of very motherly, very loving. Not that scene, it's too much the same color, but she needs to be like walking through a landscape. Let's see, what might that look like? I just pulled apart some old calendars that someone had given me, and look what happens when we start to place them into different settings, right? Like then all of a sudden maybe that story changes. Like here, if this is she's standing in this cornfield, right? There's another season of abundance being represented there. So we can start to figure out what is the story that she's telling, right? Like I'm not the one telling the story here. She's the one telling the story. Put a piece of clean paper behind her so I can see her. And I'm really feeling like I want to use some of these little painty bits and pieces for some little flowers in her hair, maybe along her waistline here, to just kind of represent some of the sort of the symbolism of that harvesting of the apples of wisdom. No, that's not what I want. Or maybe they just have to be cut out and I have to be a little more patient. I like these kind of partially painted ones. Maybe she needs to be holding a basket full of apples. I do like the little decorative bits there. And then I get to have fun going on a hunt through all of my collage images for a basket, right? So it just feels like this needs to represent some little bit of flowers in her hair there. So now that feels a little bit better, like all the circles feel and the lace feel representative of the gifts and the abundance. Feels like she needs a little pop of green up there in her hair. Oh, there's an actual little bit of a flower. Maybe we'll just see if we can cut that out. A little pop of green up there. Oh, there she is. It feels like her story is starting to emerge. There's still lots of journal writing to be done. I'm going to refocus this. Give me 1 second. come in just a little bit closer on her face. I so love these paper doll faces. They feel so magical and such a fun, quick, easy way to kind of make the dolls my own a little bit faster. Get all these little bits and pieces on here. Maybe add a little bit of yellow to the center. And then as I go about the day today, I will let her just sit here on my art table. I will come back to her to do that journaling after I let her just rest here for a bit. Let's see, kind of want this to lay down just so that it doesn't get ripped off. We'll see if it'll stick to that lace. So I'm loving her. I'm loving using these fun painty papers. And I get to think about where to go next with her, right? This idea of harvest, to this idea of abundance, to this idea of really owning and honoring my gifts. But it also feels like the basket would be such a fun symbol to add. One of the journal prompts is, what dreams are still waiting on the branch, not ready? And another one is, where do I feel abundance? And it feels like the apples in the basket are where I feel abundant and nourished already. So maybe there needs to be a tree in the background with some apples on it that are still holding the gifts to be harvested in this season. So there's a beautiful story emerging here, and she feels complete for now, and she feels like part of a bigger scene. So I'll have fun flipping through collage imagery to figure out what's that next piece going to be. And all these colors are just making me so happy today. So thank you as always for joining me for our orchard doll and our really honoring our own process, our own wisdom, the gifts of everything that we have learned on the journey that we've been on in our life so far. Glad to be back with all of you live, or thank you for those of you that are watching the replay. Much appreciated. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you all back here next week. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.